The topic we're going to deal with in section 9.5 is percent composition. I'll give you a few seconds to write down your notes, pause the video and write down your notes and copy down this problem. Now, percent composition describes the mass composition of a compound by showing what percentage of it comes from each element. The importance of this is that many times a laboratory analysis of a compound will be expressed in percent composition. And the first problem demonstrates how this is done. Let's say I send a 30-gram sample of aluminum sulfate to a lab, and it's discovered that it contains 4.731 grams of aluminum, 8.43 grams of sulfur, and 16.883 grams of oxygen. I want to know its percent composition. Now, it's important to remember that when we're dealing with percentages, a percent is just a part over a whole times 100. And so this is the basic equation we're going to use for this problem. So let's first figure out the percent composition for the element aluminum. So what we do is we simply take the mass of the aluminum, which is the part, 4.731 grams of aluminum, and we divide that by the whole, which is the 30 grams of aluminum sulfate. And multiply that number by 100. And when we do that division and multiplication, we end up with 15.77% aluminum in the sample. Now, realize I'm sticking with the 4 significant digits here. Then we take a look at the sulfur in the sample, and I have 8.43 grams of sulfur. So that's my part that goes on the top. I divide that. Oh, I think there's supposed to be a 6 here that I left off when I copied the problem. Yes, I apologize for that. There's supposed to be a 6 there. And divide that by my whole of 30 grams of aluminum sulfate. Multiply that by 100. I get 28.12% sulfur. And finally, for the oxygen, I take the 16.833 grams of oxygen, divide that part by the whole of 30, and I get 56.11% oxygen. Now, you should check your answer on this. Make sure that when you add up your percentages, they all add up to 100%. That's your check. If they don't, you did something wrong, and you should go back. Now, we can also find the percent composition from the formula. So for this problem, it says just find the percent composition of aluminum sulfate. For this problem, I am going to assume that I have a 1 mole sample. And I'm also going to find the molar masses. So let's find the molar mass of aluminum sulfate. Okay. The first thing I do is I will find it for aluminum. So it's 2 times, now remember the molar masses come off of my chart. So for aluminum, remember we're using these masses here. So I have 26.98 grams per mole. When I do the multiplication, I get 53.96 grams per mole. For sulfur, I have 3 sulfurs because I have this 3 outside here. So it's 3 times 32.07 grams per mole. And that comes out to be 96.20 grams per mole. And then for my oxygen, I have 12 of those because 3 times 4 is 12 oxygens. So 12 times 15.999, oops, we're rounding that off to 16. 16.00 grams per mole. And so I get 192.0 grams per mole. When I add those up, I get a grand total of 342.16 grams per mole for aluminum sulfate. Now for my percent composition, remember it's the part over the whole times 100%. So taking each of these separately, I have my aluminum, which I found the part is 53.96. grams of aluminum over my whole at the bottom here of 342.16 grams of aluminum sulfate. Multiply that by 100 and I get 15.77% of aluminum. For my sulfur, I take this number here for my sulfur, the part, 96.20 grams of sulfur over my total, 342.16 grams of aluminum sulfate times 100, and I get 28.12% sulfur. And for my oxygen, oops, sorry. For my oxygen, I have my part, which is 192 grams of oxygen over my total of 342.16 grams of aluminum sulfate. Multiply that by 100 and I get 56.11% oxygen. So that is how I do that problem. Now notice those percentages are exactly the same as for the previous problem. And that is due to the law of definite composition. This means that the ratio of elements in a compound is constant for every particle in that compound. And so that allows us to do the next problem, which I'm going to do in a separate video so I don't run out of time. But copy it down.